Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I start, Mathieu? It's okay?
You can.
Okay. So thank you very much for the introduction. We are here today to talk about our migration journey in a large gases company, where we did have quite a huge amounts of Azure Analysis Services instances to migrate to Power BI Premium. So we will talk a little bit about it with you. So on my side, I'm Charles-Henri Sauget, MVP Data Platform. I do write a lot in French. Today we will be in an international audience, but more used to talk in French. And I'm with Mathieu.
Yes, Mathieu Roy. Thank you for joining this session. I'm a data platform engineer at insiders.com, which is a French consulting company, and working with Charles-Henri.
Don't hesitate to ask questions along the way. We will be focused on the session, but also on the chat. So do it. It will be more interactive. So if we go through the agenda, we have quite some things to say about the context of the customer, where we did have the implementation to migrate, and why we did choose to migrate. When we will have this context set, we will talk about what was our migration planning, checklist, and tools used to perform this migration. And at the end, we will conclude with some real-life feedback on the migration journey. We hope we are as much excited as us to have feedback about it. So about the context, we did have 60 plus Azure Analysis Services instances in production. So it was a lot more if you count all of the non-production environment. It was set up since, I guess, 2018.
I would say
17,
but yeah.
17? Oh, 17,
around
18.
there.
Yeah, so we did have a lot of adoption around this analysis services deployment. And in these instances, we did have 200 Azure Analysis Services models, because as you know, you have instances in Azure, and then you have models deployed in it. With that, we did have more than 3K Power BI semantic models, and more than 20K users. So the architecture is quite classic. We did have some SQL or some data sources, data factory to move the data into the cloud, mainly in Synapse SQL pool dedicated. Yes, we did use SQL pool dedicated also. We can talk about that one day also if we want. And on top of that, Azure Analysis Services, tabular model, and Power BI directly connected to it with a live connection. Do you want to add something, Mathieu?
Yeah, regarding the Power BI users, prior to the migration, we were relying mostly on Power BI Pro licenses. That's a thing we will talk about in the next slide. And regarding the Power BI landscape, we have reports that are built on top of Azure Analysis Services, but also a large self-BI landscape built by users that are familiar with Power BI as well.
Yeah, to jump on some comment, yes, they did are mainly in a star schemas 300 models. But we talked about data sets, so it may not be models, but direct connected data sets also.
Yeah, it's a pretty large landscape, including reports, models, data flows, Excel files, of course.
So why did we decide to migrate and why should we migrate? As you may know, Azure Analysis Services is already quite an old service. It's not evolving so much since 2019, last main evolution of the service. You have this beautiful picture from Microsoft documentation showing that Power BI, you may have heard that Power BI Premium is becoming the superset, the superset of Azure Analysis Services. Yeah, in other words, please migrate to Power BI Premium, I guess. If you want to use the new features and the other things that we will develop in the future, please migrate. We heard that this way. And yes, we do have some benefit from using Power BI Premium feature, like the fact that, as you saw, we do have 20K plus users with Pro license. We do expect to have less Power BI Pro user using premium capacities. You do have some features that we are missing, like incremental refresh. Yeah, you can definitely can implement it through custom development, but the feature of incremental is quite user-friendly. We do love it. Automatic aggregation and the fact that you have a better PureView integration with Power BI Premium datasets than with Azure Analysis Services, because we do use PureView, and it was required for us to have custom development in PureView to make it work with Azure Analysis Services, for example. And I don't know if you already tried Fabric, but it's something, we guess, something that will be the future of our data platform. So if you want to be Fabric ready and be ready for Copilot, we know that Benny do love Copilot, so so if we want to be ready for that, we do need to go in this direction. We was hoping at first some financial efficiencies, so some financial benefit. We will talk about it in conclusion, but it's more about the superset story and the new feature announcement than financial efficiencies at the end. So what was the journey?
Yeah. Should I take it from there?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so regarding our migration journey, it started, I would say, 1 year ago with a lot of preparation, planning, and testing. And so we have identified many steps that are listed here. First of them is what we've called the inventory. So knowing what we are going to migrate, what is our current consumption in Azure Analysis Services to determine how many Power BI Premium capacity will be required. Then do the proper capacity planning. So how many Power BI Premium capacity we will need to buy to cover our current footprint and the future footprint. All the tools preparation, the documentation, the communication to the end users, a lot of tests that we are going to talk about. All of that to, at the end, get things done and start the migration. The goal of the migration was for us to be as transparent as possible for the end user. So meaning it's just a technical migration that will bring more features at the end for the end user, but it's more like an IT thing that where the IT teams will make sure everything will work properly at the end for the end user with the minimum actions required on their side. Regarding the strategy we've used for our capacities, we have gone with few large capacities per geography instead of having smaller capacities. This is explained by the fact that we have some large models like 30, 40 gigabytes on some region. So you will see that there is a memory requirement for each, a memory limit for each Power BI SKU, Power BI Premium SKU. So this is a first limitation to have in mind. And having large capacities also allow to have more power for or more resources available at every time for all the projects that are hosted on the capacity. Regarding the tools we use, so for the inventory, you will see that we've used some PowerShell, of course, with the AZ and SQL Server modules to discover all the server, all the models, the metadata, and so on. We have relied also on Power BI REST APIs to build a cockpit view that I will present right after. We used also Azure Monitor to measure our QPU usage, so I will talk about that as well, which is the mostly the CPU consumption on Azure Analysis Services. And of course, the migration assistant, which is now included in Fabric, which help us a lot perform some critical steps for the migration, and we are going to demo that as well.
Yeah, can I just give a quick wrap-up of that? As you need to understand, inventory and capacity planning is quite a large issue, or not issue, but project on this migration journey. You do have 200 plus analysis services instance with multiple models in it, and you need to translate this infrastructure into a new one that is completely different. When you talk about analysis services instances, you have a QPU usage and memory usage also, with memory capacity by tier, and you have in the target architecture something about capacity unit. It was Vecor at the time, but it became capacity units with Fabric. And then you need to translate it. So you need to know what's really used in this analysis services instance, because you don't want just to see the tier in Azure Analysis Services and translate it into an exact replica in Power BI, because it will be a lot more expensive if you do that. You want to know what am I really using as QPUs and memory in the existing architecture, and what will be the required architecture in destination, right? So it requires a big part of the journey as inventory and capacity planning. But we did with the tool that Mathieu will just demonstrate now.
Yes. So one of the tools we've created is, of course, a Power BI report, the best tool to do that. So we are looking at a report that helps us do the inventory and consolidate all the information we have regarding the Azure Analysis Services server that we can see here, the models as well. So knowing, okay, I have this server which hosts those models, and then having also all the impacts in the Power BI service. So knowing all the reports that are connected to those models in Azure Analysis Services. Along with the views and the users. So we are able to evaluate the criticity of each project and their Azure Analysis Services instances. So we can start smaller and go bigger afterwards. So to build this, to build a list of servers and models, as I said, we used a custom PowerShell script that basically discover all the landscape we have in Azure Analysis Services. To have the global overview of all the reports, data sets, data flows, and so on we have in Power BI service, we relied a lot on Power BI scanner APIs, which give you the list of reports, data sets, and most importantly, the data source of each data sets. So you can then So in this report, we are focused on the reports and data sets connected to Azure Analysis Services, but you can have many more information about your footprint in Power BI service. And for the views and users, we use the Power BI activity events APIs, to evaluate over time the usage of reports. So here we have the impact on report in live connection, but we have the same for what we call the data set that we will need to update. So data sets in import mode or composite mode. Same for data flows. And we have also the Excel users list, because they will have also maybe something to do to make sure their Excel files are still connected to the data at the end of the migration. So this was for the inventory. Regarding the capacity planning, as Charles-Henri said, it's a very critical part for knowing how many capacity you will need in your targets. So first step is to know what is your current usage in Azure Analysis Services. So you need to have a view of two metrics: the memory usage and the QPU vCore capacity unit usage. So in Azure Analysis Services, we're talking about QPU, which is a metric for CPU usage. And in Power BI, at first we were talking about vCores, and it's now capacity units CUs. So to know which capacity you will need, first you need to have a look at your memory requirement. It's one of the characteristics of Power BI Premium Capacity. The memory usage is per data sets in Power BI, where in Azure Analysis Services it was the old memory usage for all the models inside the server. So it's a bit different than in Azure Analysis Services, but pretty convenient in that case. So again, we have used an extraction to know, okay, all this model is this size, and to know what is the max size of a server, to know if it will fit in the capacity. If I take like a P1 SKU, a P1 capacity, you have, I guess, 25 gig of memory available in that capacity. It doesn't mean that you can host a 24 gig model on that capacity, because you will need to have a spare memory to be able to process and to refresh your semantic model. So basically, you can store a model half the memory limit of your capacity. So if you have a P1, you can host up to 12.5 gigabyte model. So that's what we are checking here. We double the size of our max model for a set of server, and we see if it will fit on our capacity. So here, I guess we have a P4, so 200 gigabyte memory. So we see that for the memory usage, we are fine. Then you need to have a look at the CPU usage, which will be the second things to have a look to. So in Azure Analysis Services, we have the QPU usage. How can we convert that in vCore or in CUs? There is no absolute science about that, but we
do have the help of our friends SQL BI, right?
Yes, we used this article from SQL BI that was originally built to help the migration from SQL Server Analysis Services to Azure Analysis Services, which gives us a metric, which again is not absolute science, but it gives you a conversion between cores, vCores, and QPUs. So we know that one vCore is equivalent to 20 QPUs. So for Power BI, then we are talking about vCore or capacity units. So a capacity unit is so a vCore is 8 capacity units. So by having all those information in mind, we were able to collect the QPU usage over time using Azure Monitor data. So we know that for every time point here per minute, if I remember correctly, we have the QPU usage that we can convert to the estimated vCore using this conversion metric. And so we know if our CPU usage will fit in P1, P2, P3, or P4, P5 capacity. So here we see that for P1, for the QPU usage of this set of server, definitely won't fit into a P1, neither P2, neither P3, but P4 could be fine. Yeah, you have to be careful with this kind of conversion because the CPU is not reported the same way in Azure Analysis Services and Power BI Premium. In Azure Analysis Services, both interactive and background operation like refresh are reported the same for QPU, but in Power BI Premium and Fabric, it's two different metrics: the background operation and the interactive operations.
Just to be sure to be clear, what we did here is that we did connect log analytics behind all of the Azure Analysis Services instances. This way, we did collect the real metrics of usage of these servers. And it was this real life metrics of the instance that was the base of the conversion, not the theoretical QPUs by tier in Azure Analysis Services. Because if we did it theoretically on the maximum usage of QPU by an Azure Analysis Services instance, the price would be a lot more important, as we did have some server that was underused most of the time.
Okay, that's it for. So by having this tool, we were able to know, okay, we have that set of server. Will it fit into the capacity we will buy or not? And so that's how we have done our capacity planning and planned all the capacity buy during the migration. Now, regarding the migration itself, so there are some prerequisites to have in mind. So to migrate a tabular model in Power BI Premium, a few things to know. The compatibility level needs to be higher or equal to 1500. There is no processor permission in the roles in Power BI Premium, so you need to get rid of this permission in your roles to be able to migrate. And you can't have any service principals in the roles membership. So again, something to have in mind. Then you can use the migration assistant, which is included in Fabric that we will demo right after. But to use this tool, you need to have some permissions and some setups in place. So regarding the permissions, you need to be at least a contributor of the Azure Analysis Services server resource. So it's managed in the IAM page in the Azure portal, for example. And you need to be a server administrator as well. You need to be, of course, admin of the Power BI workspace that will host the migrated model. And you need to have the backup feature enabled in both Azure Analysis Services and Power BI. So in Azure Analysis Services, it can be configured through the Azure portal, for example. And for Power BI, you need to basically link an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 to your workspace. Keep in mind that to perform this operation, you need to be owner of this storage, otherwise it won't work. So having said that, basically you need to be kind of admin on the IT side to perform to use the migration assistant. Otherwise, you won't have enough permission to do so. Okay, so let's jump on the demo, and we are going to use the migration assistant. So migration assistant, which can be found here in the settings menu, and here you have Azure Analysis Services migrations. So if you want to start a new migration, you go here, new migration. Basically, you will choose your Azure Analysis Services server and your target Power BI Premium workspace, and it will make the connection between the two. So you can browse your Azure subscription here, browse your resource groups, and choose your server. And then you can select the target Power BI workspace. So I've already set up the migration here, so I will reuse it. But basically, after the migration, you are going here. So you have a sum up of your migration configuration with the Azure Analysis Services world and the Power BI Premium world here with the workspace, on which capacities queue it is hosted, and so on. The migration assistant will check if everything is correctly set up. So if you have all the correct permission, if for example, if the Azure Data Lake storage is correctly linked to your target workspace, everything will be checked. Then you have here the list of the tabular models that are hosted on Azure Analysis Services, and you can choose to include them or not in your migration. And then you can hit migrate here, and basically what the assistant will do is that it will create a backup of the Azure Analysis Services model, copy the backup file to the Azure Data Lake storage Gen2 linked to the workspace, and then perform a restore operation in the workspace. So the migration will handle the migration assistant will handle the migration of the model structure, as well as the data, the roles, everything, the data sources. It handles also the conversion of the analysis services roles, because it's something different between Azure Analysis Services and Power BI Premium and Power BI in general. So in Azure Analysis Services, to grant access user to a model, you just have to have a role with the read permission, and then inside you can have memberships based on identities, security groups, service principal, and so on. But to give access to a semantic model in Power BI, you need to set up the semantic model permission or datasets permission on the datasets. And the roles inside the model are used just to manage the row-level security and object-level security. But if you have just the roles, your user won't have access to the model. So you need to have both datasets permission and roles if you are doing row-level security or object-level security. If you give full access to your model, just the semantic model permissions will be enough.
Yeah, and anyway, the migration assistant will do this permission update at a dataset level for you. So it's okay, but keep in mind if you do deploy yourself an analysis services model in Power BI, that you will need to add these permissions.
Yes. So migration is pretty fast depending on the size of your model, but yeah, basically migration assistant will handle the copy of your data set, and you will be able to find it then in your workspace here. So I have here the migrated model, and for the next demos, we have here some sample reports that are still connected to Azure Analysis Services, because right now, we have just created a copy of our tabular model in Azure Analysis Services into Power BI. But then we need to manage all the dependencies. So dependencies can be very, there are a lot of dependencies, and we have listed some of them here, and how to deal with them. So first case is reports in live connection. It's the easier case, and maybe the most common one. So reports that are connected directly to your Azure Analysis Services instance. So for that case, you will be able to use the migration assistant, which has a Rebind feature. We are going to demo it after. It's definitely the recommended way to reconnect a lot of reports that are connected to your Azure Analysis Services model. At the same time, it's very fast. It browses all the Power BI tenants. So even workspace where you don't have access to, the reports will be reconnected automatically. So very, very cool. There is a Rebind API available in Power BI. So you can plan to use it, but be careful, because if you rebind a report to a data set which is in another workspace, so in the sample that I've showed just before, it's fine. But if I have a report which is another workspace and I want to reconnect it to this new data set, it will break the download function, so I won't be able to download the report anymore, which is kind of annoying. So that's why the migration assistant Rebind feature is definitely the way to go for that case. Then we have data sets or semantic models that are import mode or composite mode, and that have a connection to Azure Analysis Services. So for that, you will need to update the model to make it to connect it to the XMLA endpoint of Power BI, to connect it to your migrated model. For that, you have two available options. There is a feature that we are going to show as well, which is called the server redirection. So basically, you can set up a redirection of your Azure Analysis Services endpoint to your XMLA endpoint in Power BI. And so all the queries that are, when you enable that feature, going through the Azure Analysis Services endpoint, are automatically redirected to your Power BI dataset. This is a redirection. This is not a proper connection string update in your datasets. If you want to do so, you can use the update data source API. So you can embed that API into a script or an application. So regarding these two options, there is some things to have in mind. So when you use the server redirection, when you enable this feature, it will break all your data sets refresh, because you will have to reset the data source credential in your semantic model settings. So as soon as you enable that feature, it will break all your data sets, and a data sets owner will have to update their data source credential. So definitely something to have in mind, because it can break just with a click of a button or many semantic models.
Yeah, and it makes sense, as it's invalidating the token that was generating for another audience. So definitely. It makes sense, but yes, as you said, be careful.
And if you want to use the update data source API, you need to know that you have to be dataset owner to use this API on a semantic model. So you can't do it like centrally on the IT side for all your users, because you don't want to be owner of all the data sets connected to tabular models. So in our case, we have created like some sort of web application that embed the update data source API, so users can connect to this app, to this app, and use basically the update data source API using their own Power BI identity. So they stay owner of the data sets, but they have to do this operation that we have made easier by implementing this web application. But definitely it's a manual operation to do and to prepare for the migration. So two choices: redirection or using the update data source API. Then you have the data flows. So then data flows, Excel files, or queries that are run in DAX Studio, SQL Server Management Studio, and so on. So for those, definitely you can use the redirection feature. Otherwise, you will have to update manually the connection string. So update manually in data flows, change in the Excel files connection, and change in SQL Server Management Studio and so on. So in our landscape, we also add data factory pipelines that we use to trigger the model refresh at the end when the data warehouse were loaded. Then the analysis services model were refreshed. So we need to update our pipelines to make sure they refresh the Power BI semantic models now. We use Azure DevOps to source control our code and to deploy on the Azure Analysis Services endpoint. So now we need to update that as well to deploy the models to the Power BI XMLA endpoint. And if you have monitoring or alerting solutions, you will need to update those as well. So to monitor your capacity, you have only one option for now. It's the Fabric Capacity Metric app that gives you metrics of memory usage and capacity units usage over time. And for logs, you can rely on log analytics that you can link to a workspace. So we are going to rebind some reports now. So we are going again into the migration assistant. And to rebind the report in Live Connection, you can use the Rebind feature, as I said, which you can find there. You will need to rebind models by models. So yeah, you can have that in mind. And it's a very fast operation here. So you can see that it will rebind report in workspaces, report in personal workspaces as well. And if I go in the workspace now, we can see that my report that was in Live Connection is now connected to my migrated model, which is connected to my database. And the dataset that is connected to Azure Analysis Services is still here. It's interesting because you can, if you want, it's a very convenient feature. If you want to roll back your change, you can undo rebind, and it will reconnect automatically all your reports that have been connected to your migrated model to the original dataset connected to Azure Analysis Services. So you can undo that. But so when you are sure that the migration is over, you will need to find a way to get rid of those, we call it orphan datasets or orphan semantic models. And then for like reports or datasets in import mode or composite mode, you see that here the model is still connected to Azure Analysis Services. So we can update the data source using the API, as I said, or you can enable the server redirection feature that I mentioned. You can enable it there. It's very fast as well.
And it means that when you will call this the old endpoint, it will access the new Power BI XML endpoint, right?
Yes, exactly. So now users, connecting to this endpoint are indeed, in reality, connecting to this workspace.
And just now you did just broke any connection because you need to,
Yeah, we can try it there. Maybe I have connected before. Well, we can have a look in the, so changing the credential, you can do it there. And you see here, I have a little warning. So I need to edit my credential, reset them. But again, it's just a redirection. So all the UI and so on are still displaying the Azure Analysis Services connection. But in fact, there is no connection to Azure Analysis Services anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a drawback of server redirection is that you keep this old name, this old server, and you will even be able to delete the analysis services instance and still be able to access it through to access the new Power BI dataset through the old name. So could be confusing.
Yeah, but you can, as you mentioned, you can stop the Azure Analysis Services server when you have enabled the redirection. And you can even drop the Azure Analysis Services server. Oh. Okay, so now that we have talked about how to migrate technically a model, how to handle all the dependencies, there are some post-configuration that you can have a look to. So we have already talked about user access management with datasets permission that are always required to grant a user access to the semantic model, and the roles that are now used to manage only row level and object level securities. We have talked about the server redirection that you can enable. For the backups, so as you have attached an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 to your workspace, you can benefit from the same backup feature as in Azure Analysis Services. And on your new semantic models, there are some configuration that you maybe should have a look to, like the query caching, which is not enabled by default, the large semantic storage format, and if you want to make sure your users can see the semantic models through Power BI Desktop using the OneLake Data Hub connector, you can promote or certify your production semantic models to make sure they can see those models in Power BI Desktop. Otherwise, if they have never accessed those models, they won't see it. So using the promotion certification label makes sure that the model will appear in the endorsed by your organization tab of the OneLake Data Hub in Power BI Desktop. And you can also enable the query scale-out eventually if you need to split across multiple nodes your usage.
If you are rich. Maybe I can take this one.
Okay.
I'm starting to be bored, and we are running out of time. So one of the things we did learn the hard way is that we need to test again after deployment or during the deployment process, because you will have some feature discrepancies and also some performance difference. So what we did is that we did develop a mechanism based on .NET Core and Azure Function to rerun the exact same workload. So we did capture the queries that was in production for a specific server, and then replay exactly the same in the same time, in the same time series, the each queries to check if it was as fast as the previous deployment. Quick hint, it was not as fast. We mainly lose some time. Performance was a lot, in most of the case, slower than in Azure Analysis Services. It's mainly explained by the difference in the compute for Azure Analysis Services and Power BI Premium. Yeah,
we do have performed some sort of CPU benchmark between Azure Analysis Services and Power BI Premium capacity. So we use what we call the formula engine stress query. So basically, it's a query that uses only the formula engine and not the storage engine. And it can give us an idea of the clock speed of the CPU, or if the CPU is faster. At least have a comparison between Azure Analysis Services and Power BI. And so you can see that, Power BI Premium average query duration for this stress query is a bit longer.
Yeah, and we did have some amazing support from Microsoft, both Unify support and product group, to try to investigate and to do some real enhancement in the service and to give us some explanation. So thank you thanks them. It was a great support, but yet we still not exactly happy for some workload, like Excel queries in particular.
Yeah. There is a question regarding is this a generalization we can make? Basically, I would say that the generalization we can make is that if your query relies heavily on the formula engine, it will be slower on Power BI Premium.
Yeah, and yet it do depends. We did have some queries that was faster in Power BI Premium, but globally in our workload, and it's really specific to our workload, it was faster before the migration. Yeah.
Some conclusions.
Yeah, so as Mathieu mentioned, you do require high privilege permission to perform the migration. As he mentioned, you do need to have permission in storage, to have permission as a tenant admin, to have permission almost everywhere in the equation. So if you are in a large company, you will need some people around you. Power BI apps need to be manually updated for the change to be visible in the applications. We need to plan for removing the legacy connection in Power BI. And we do have some query and refresh performance difference, not necessarily issues, because you can manage it through new mechanism in Power BI Premium, and because it's not as simple as saying it's slower, because using Power BI Premium, you can benefit from burst, you can benefit from smoothing in the workload. So maybe for some analysis services instances that was under heavy pressure, heavy CPU pressure, we may have some benefits with the capacity to have at some point in time some overconsumption in Premium. So it's not as easy. In our testing, we took some real data from some real workloads, but yet doing some optimization, changing a little bit also the measures may help to make it work with Premium also. Yeah, using the Power BI REST API is definitely a way to update things after migration. But we do have some limits in this Power BI REST API, mainly some that do prevent future download of the PBIX, and it may be frustrating. And if you do not use the migration assistant for everything, if you want to add user into the dataset permissions, you will have a limit of 200 calls per hour. So if you have a large set of users to impact into the dataset permission, it may be just a nightmare to do so. As you don't have any batch mechanism, you will have to have some throttling mechanism to be sure you do your 200 calls, wait an hour, do 200 more. So definitely something to have in mind. You only have export for the logs to Azure Log Analytics. In the past, we did for Azure Analysis Services use more storage, Azure storage, because it was cheaper. So now it's more expensive. And we started to migrate to alias to the Azure Analysis Services server. You know, you was having a feature where you point some alias to the server name. We was hoping that it will be useful to facilitate the migration to Power BI Premium, but in the end, you can't use alias to Power BI Premium dataset, the old alias one in Azure Analysis Services. So it was bad news. And using the capacity metric app that is relying in capacity units and even the Fabric one may seems a little bit more limited than the old Azure Monitor one that we used to use.
Yeah, you can't extract the data, and you have a retention of 15 days from now. So if you want to have a larger retention, you have to build, you have to take workarounds.
So I will give some elements about cost, because we had a question about it. The migration was a huge effort, so it comes with a first cost, that is the human cost to do all of what you was presented today. Mathieu worked a lot on this topic. All the tools that we needed to develop was something that doesn't exist and wasn't provided by default. The migration is a huge effort. We did some custom development, so it has a cost. But at the end, even if it's more costly, and even the capacity equivalent premium capacity is more costly than the Azure Analysis Services in comparison. If you just take vCore comparisons, the cost is higher using premium. But you don't buy the same thing. You have the Pro license in it. As we mentioned at first, we did have a lot of Power BI Pro license at the beginning. And we also have a lot of new features available in this premium capacities. So at the end, it's difficult to just compare it cost relatively, because you don't have the same thing from Azure Analysis Services to Power BI Premium. And we need also to remember that if we want to go to Fabric one day, if we want to have a long-term strategy, the longer we wait from Azure Analysis Services to the future of the data platform, maybe with Fabric, the higher the step will be. So we decided to migrate it. You want to add something regarding that, Mathieu?
No, that's clear.
So we do have some question. Oh, about the fallback strategy. What do you mean about the fallback strategy?
Feel free to come off mute, Adrian, if that's easier than typing out the entire question.
You mean what if the migration isn't a success and we want to come back to? Yeah, okay, makes sense. Actually, it's pretty well handled by the migration assistant. If you do use the migration assistant, you can disable everything you did migrate afterwards. So it's pretty well handled by the migration assistant. Yeah. Regarding Key Vault, it's just not in the picture for now. Yeah, it was a simplified version, possible future architecture without all the services available to support it.
Yeah, may depending on the server stress, right? Yes, actually the query doesn't, the query we showed doesn't use 100% of the CU, so yeah, it's just for comparison.
Yeah, and you need to keep in mind what we did as a testing scenario is that we took some queries run in a certain timeline into Azure Analysis Services and just rerun it the exact same way in Power BI Premium capacity and check what was the average of query time for each of these workload. So a lot of things can vary. Definitely, if you have multiple users doing some, like nosy neighbors, but we have to handle now with Power BI Premium or Fabric capacities. If you have any more questions, we are at the end, actually. It was the last slide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
There was one more question a bit earlier from Kun, who was asking, do you have some DAX best practices specific for Power BI Premium? Probably related to the formula engine stuff you mentioned before.
Related to Power BI Premium only, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do have, because as we do our consultant, I'm mainly in intervention about Premium these days. And the main concern is why are my capacity units not enough for my workload? How can I make it better? And the best practice is make your reports faster, optimizing the queries mainly. So what we tend to do, and even in this project, we tend to monitor heavily the queries from the users. So the dashboard that you saw that give us all of the queries from log analytics is mandatory. We can't live without it, because you need to identify what are the queries that are the most consuming in the capacity in Premium, and you need to tackle the optimization of it. Because for the same business requirement, you can go from 3 minutes of consumption of capacity units used to something like 2 seconds. So if you succeed to work with your users, to work with your developers to make it run faster from a development perspective, you will have a good financial and performance optimization of your capacity. But it's weird, because we don't used to say, if you have issues with your capacity, just go see your user to make them work better. It's quite a strong statement. It's saying you need to do governance to make it work. But it seems to be the best practice that work with Fabric or Power BI capacities. Yeah, okay. Definitely give Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari books by truck.
I have a question, because you said that in the end, if I understand well, analysis services, Azure Analysis Services is more performant than the Power BI Premium. Okay, but then you say, okay, we have to look at the big picture. I understand. But what I miss is, what are the additional features we have in Power BI that we don't have in analysis services, that you would say, okay, let's do that step? Is it about report visualization or that kind of stuff? Because on the back end, I mean, really what I would call the tabular model, I don't see what we are missing with the analysis services at the moment. So I'm just trying to understand what is more and on the feature level.
Yeah, what is more? It's not so much actually. You are right. It's mainly incremental refresh feature that is not supported in tabular. You can reproduce it using code, but it's not natively supported. It's more about usage. You may be able to modify now the semantic layer from powerbi.com, for example. You know, it will never be possible to do so with Azure Analysis Services, and it's more accumulating the technical debts each year because you don't have the same new features implemented into Azure Analysis Services. You don't have something that is, except maybe the automatic aggregations. But Mathieu just sent me by chat.
Okay.
But yeah.
And also the licensing part. As if you don't have a premium, you will have to give your users one pro license, even though they are just report user.
Okay.
And if you project yourself in the Fabric world, there is no doubt you have features supported in a capacity that doesn't exist in Azure Analysis Services.
Because in fact, we are running the Microsoft SQL Server stack on premise at the moment. So we want to go to the, let's say, to the cloud, to the Azure cloud. The question that I have is, okay, are we better to go directly to Microsoft Fabric, or should we go to Azure Synapse with Azure Analysis Services? Maybe difficult to answer in 1 minute, but okay, that's what is in our mind.
What's your statement, Benny, on this question?
Are you asking Microsoft Benny because he's out of office?
No, the community Benny.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it's a very tricky question. I mean, honestly, if I got the choice today whether I would migrate to Synapse, I would not do it today. If I get to choose today on something whether I migrate something or not, I would not migrate to Synapse. I would prefer going to either Databricks or Fabric workloads purely for that data analytics workload. For the data set itself, it's very dependent on what the requirements are. For me, the key one, for instance, is the fact that for business users, there's no composite models when you're working on Azure Analysis Services as a data source. So it's I mean, honestly, look at Fabric, but unless you're in a rush, you can wait it out for a couple of months or even longer before even starting to think very, very concretely about migrating those things.
Okay.
Yeah, I will be more this incisive than you, Benny. I will definitely go to Fabric on my side. No way I'm deploying an Azure Analysis Services or Synapse anymore. No way I can recommend that.
Yeah, it's depending on the organization, because not every organization is as receptive for software as a service versus platform as a service versus infrastructure as a service versus having a server physically standing in their own basement. That's the key thing there. I think that's the question to solve internally first. What's the position and how comfortable are you with where your data actually lives? That's the key question to solve. Second thing is then look at features, look at those kind of things.
Okay, well, we'll be in touch with you later to have more in-depth discussion about that topic.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Have a chat with your local Microsoft account team, and they know how to find me.
Okay, cool.
But not right now because I'm on vacation.
No, but first Christmas holidays and then.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.